It's amazing to me how many people make decisions based on emotion versus based on data. In the end, people don't slow down. They don't take the time. They don't ask themselves, why am I doing this? They just make a decision because they figure if I don't make a decision, we're going to be further behind the 8 ball. And a lot of it comes down to how do I feel about it at this point in time, today, right now. And tomorrow, we'll deal with tomorrow.
You're locked in to Burn the Blueprint podcast, where Tony Tidbit and Dr. Bridget Cooper challenge outdated rules and build smarter ways to lead. If you're ready for courage, clarity, and real talk, you're in the right place. All right, team, what blueprint are we burning today?
Hi, welcome to Burn the Blueprint. This is Colleen Ferrary, the CEO and founder of Peak, and I am so happy to have one of my favorite people, Ben Baker, with us today. Welcome, Ben.
You know what, Colleen? This is going to be fun. I've been waiting for this all day. So this is great. I'm looking forward to just getting to chat with you because we don't do it often enough.
No, life is busy, right? Busy is a good problem to have. But I know a lot of companies that we talk to are also busy. So I think we're going to have some fun talking about alignment today, especially in the life sciences. But I think this is a one-size-fits-all conversation. You can replace scientist with engineer, with CEO, with CFO, but we're going to really talk about a little about how misalignment creates chaos. And this is your specialty, my friend.
This is the fun I love to have. As they say, people bring me in when things are bent, broken, or bedlam. So you lead, I'll dance backwards in high heels. How about we'll go any which way you want to go today?
Love it. Hey, it's funny that you brought up bent, broken, or bedlam. We always say at Peak, we manage growth, trouble, and change. And if you're my marketing guy, you go growth, trouble, and change. That's our game. But we really work with a lot of investors and family offices to really straighten out a lot of these companies and making sure that they're using their time and effort and money wisely. So the end result is exactly what everyone wants. And when I think about you, Ben, and I think about our conversations that we've had in the past, we often talk about what alignment means with companies and what misalignment looks like. So do you want to kind of take this alignment conversation and start us off?
Yeah, because I think alignment is something that people look at and they think they have an idea what they're talking about, but they don't really. I look at alignment, let's take it from a car point of view. And when you're driving down the highway and everything's aligned, you can take your hands off the steering wheel, and as long as the road's going straight, you're not going to crash into anything because the car is set up to go in a straight, perfect line. The tires are all rotated properly, all the air is in the right place, the frame is straight, the axles are straight, everything is working together. And unfortunately, most companies, and a lot of it has nothing to do with other than the fact that companies grow and companies change and companies just get so big that they just don't have that same alignment, create that position of chaos. And whether that's just minor misalignment or it's, the left hand is just unaware of what the right hand is doing, we get to that point where that's where, a lot of money gets spent in all the wrong ways.
I'm going to just throw something out there because I feel like so often a CEO will say, our team is aligned. And their team beneath them says, no, we are not. And then there's another scenario that I often see when we see that everyone is aligned or believes themselves to be aligned in their one lane. But then each lane being aligned, it just is it's a traffic nightmare to use your metaphor, right?
Exactly.
So let's dig into life sciences, can we?
Sure.
Let's use some as an example.
You go whichever way you want to go. I'm here to talk to your audience and hopefully give them a little bit of wisdom. So you ask the questions, I'm willing to answer.
In how about this? In life sciences, alignment failure rarely shows up first in the science, right? It usually shows up in communication and priorities, decision velocity. We all know that, right? Analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
From your perspective, what are the earliest signals that a leadership team is becoming misaligned before the business actually feels those consequences?
Well, And I don't mean to pick on one particular group of the company, but I tend to pick on mid-level management because I call it the permafrost layer. Nothing gets up and nothing gets down. The conversation tends to start and stop at mid-level management because they're at a stage in their career where they're trying not to rock the boat. And they are willing to sit there and say, yep, my team is aligned. Absolutely, my team is aligned. Whether they're listening, they're not listening, whether they're watching, they're not watching, because that's what they believe that head office or the C-suite or whoever wants to hear. And what they're trying to do is there's a lot of justification as we move up the ladder. There's a lot of justification of careers, of budgets, of timelines, of compensation plans, of mind share of the C-suite. And all of that stuff leads to different managers say, yep, everything's fine, because in their minds, everything is. They see what they see, but they don't see the rest of the organization. All they do is they see their part of the organization. They see the people that they influence, but they're not really looking left. They're not looking right. They're not seeing what other projects are going on. They're not seeing what other difficulties might be happening within the organization. They just see what they do and they just report up. And there's not that talking amongst themselves at the mid-level management to sit there and say, okay, how does all this stuff interrelate? All right, now that we understand how it interrelates, now let's sit there and bring that information up to the top level.
So I'm going to push back a little bit because these middle managers, right? I agree.
Yeah.
This is a lot of time where that piece is. In life sciences, often we see, and I'll tell you, I've led a team, dozens of pharmacists. And the very first thing they would say to me is, Colleen, I signed up to make the world a better place, not to lead teams. Mm-hmm. I don't want to look at your stupid KPIs. I just want to help and make a difference in this life. Yep. And I believe we see that in the life sciences very, very often, whether it's medtech or biologics. I feel like we see that same thing. But I feel like in this middle space, I think you probably are infuriating a few people with that first comment leading into that comment.
Absolutely, I'm infuriating a few people. And I don't sit there and say that this is their fault. And the caveat is, a lot of this is the fact is we're great at what we do. We're really good at what we do. We've been told, now you're a leader. We've got no training whatsoever of how to be a leader.
Agree.
So we don't know how to, and we may not realize what it takes to be a leader. We don't realize how much bureaucracy and how much meetings are going on and the transfer of information. They just want to go back to working in the lab, or they just want to go back to dealing with people or solving problems or whatever. But now that they're in the leadership, they're one step removed away from that. And they're not.
You mentioned somewhere where I was going to go.
Go ahead.
You
yes.
mentioned bureaucracy.
Yeah.
So bureaucracy. I think more seasoned executives see the politics. They see the bureaucracy. I remember when I was younger, I got called out to Chicago. I was going to change a company. The VP of this large company called me out, said, hey, please come. We're going to go save the world, Colleen. Mm-hmm. You've got that. And, before that, I sat in this place where it was very easy to make change, drive change. I made a name for myself doing that very early on. And then here I go out into Chicago, and there was always this piece in the back of my head where I said, man, why isn't this happening faster? Like, what is taking so long to make decisions? What is wrong with leadership? So here I go into Chicago, where I land in this place where I am now the liaison between headquarters and I'm seeing the bureaucracy. I'm seeing people's calendars filled. I'm seeing competing priorities. I'm seeing what is, for me, was bureaucracy and politics now unfolding as just a boatload of work and competing priorities and what brings yours to the top, right? And whatever we want to call it, that's the reality that CEOs face every day and companies get encumbered by.
And I mean, let's especially when we're dealing with life sciences, let's call it as we see it. A lot of that bureaucracy is built into dealing with government organizations and dealing with insurance companies and dealing with all sorts of different things. And there's a lot of CYA.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it. There's a lot of risk and there's a lot of reward. And you're dealing with people's lives. And when you're dealing with people's lives, You need to make sure that you're going from A to B to C to D to E, because you need to make sure that if step number C goes wrong, you need to know exactly what went wrong and where it went wrong and how it did it. And that builds bureaucracy, and that builds the paperwork, and that builds the levels of decision making. That creates an cumbersome environment to be in. But unfortunately, because there's so many lives at stake, and there's so much, the insurance industry is at stake, and the government is at stake, and everybody's trying to protect everybody else, you're dealing with a situation where bureaucracy naturally evolves. And, whether we like it, whether we dislike it, that, unfortunately, in life sciences is a lot of things. And, it comes down to, all the way down to the Q&A people that sit there and say, no, we can't move forward until this, and this are signed off on. And it may seem like it's slowing it down. It may seem like it's cumbersome. But if they're not doing their job, then somebody else might miss something else moving forward.
Yeah, so let's talk about what do you do?
Exactly.
Ben, I throw you into an assignment to unravel this hairball.
I think a lot.
Where do you start?
Yeah, I mean, there's, depending on the size of the organization, you're almost having to break it down into silos and systems, because in a major organization, you could have 15 to 20 different competing projects going on simultaneously, with different project managers, different teams, different budgets, different areas of expertise, etc. And they may never talk to one another. The systemic problem is that they're all competing for one chunk of cash, and that leads to hierarchy, that leads to budgeting problems, that deals with all that. But you need to realize that that's going to be something that needs to be managed up at the C-suite, to sit there and say, you need to get such a bunch of vice presidents who realize that what we're trying to do is we're trying to solve these problems in the world. And that's the key thing, is what are the problems we're truly trying to solve in the world? Okay, those break down in certain buckets. Now that we understand the buckets of the problems that we're trying to solve, now we need to build communication systems to be able to move down the line within, all the way down to the people that are actually the R&D people and the scientists, to be able to sit there and say, we're doing this because. Okay, now let's talk about what are the things that are mission critical, and what are the things that are essential, and what are the things that are just getting in our way. And this has to go on at a variety of different levels within the organization, to be able to understand what are the critical things that need to be maintained, for insurance reasons, for litigation problems, whatever, the compliance, whatever it is. You have to understand what are the things that are important, and why are they important, and how can they be managed with other types of reality. And what are the things that are the white elephants that have just built themselves into the system over the years, that we've said, well, we've always done it this way, so we're going to do these steps, and we're going to do this. That takes a lot of time to unravel, to understand, and then it takes a lot of time to communicate. How do we move forward from here?
There's Elon Musk wrote The Infinite Game. I don't know if you read that book. I find some great value in that book. Or not, did I say Elon Musk? Simon Sinek.
Yeah, I was about to say, I didn't think it was Musk, but I was going to have to fact check you later, because I couldn't remember who wrote it.
So, I think one of the most beautiful things about the life science industry that I really love is that it is an infinite game. It is, people see where they're going. They have real passion towards going there, and it's really aligning it. And sometimes, because of the nature of who makes up this company, to your point, there is a need for a lot of information. There's a need for a lot of people involved. When I think about the medical sciences, it's, brilliant scientists, operators, investors. Everyone wants to have all of the information that they need to move forward. But I do feel that sometimes it kind of goes over, and we overcompensate, which then again slows down the process, adds bureaucracy, adds confusion. So let's talk about these highly intelligent stakeholders and how that slows innovation, and how do we create some consensus and eliminate some paralysis on that.
I think a lot of it comes down to talking to them. A lot of it comes down to them, because they understand the problems, and a lot of them understand the solutions better than you and I ever will, because they live it every day. And it could be the fact that the same data has to be entered into 3 different systems on a daily basis. Can you imagine that if you have to actually, physically enter the same data into three different computer systems every single day?
Well, they should have our systems and our AI team.
But
come in
that's
and
ju-
fix
but
that.
that's just it.
If
But
you're doing that, we need to fix that for you right away.
But the problem is it could be something
Right.
as simple as that. It could be
Right.
something as simple as the teams are in different buildings. The people that
Right.
actually need to talk to each other, some people are in New York, some people are in LA, and some people are in Kuala Lumpur, and they never get together. Maybe if those teams got together quarterly in one physical location to be able to sit down and talk about it and be able to talk about where have we been, where are we going, that could speed things up. You don't know until you're actually working with an actual product and an actual problem to sit there and say, what are the roadblocks in the way? Because every company is different. Every company has got their own
100%.
roadblocks. Every company has got their own bureaucracy. Every company has got their own sense of what's right and what's wrong and how to do things. And a lot of things, a lot of times you're going to get that comment, well, we've always done it this way. And the next question is, okay, why? Why do you always do it this way? And they might have a completely justified answer of why it needs to be done. Or they can just say, well, I don't know, we've just always done it that way. And then it's coming up and says, well, is there a better way we could do that? Well, yeah, there is. Great, let's talk about it. And
yeah, it's an interesting thing because, Ben, I find very often that you go into these companies and everyone shows up with a different level of experience. Mm-hmm. Everyone shows up with a very high level of intelligence. And there are best practices and SOPs that have been carried along and carried down, right? This is a very incestuous industry. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden you keep adding SOP on top of SOP on top of SOP, yeah. And it creates this paralysis and this slowdown. And I feel like when in this particular space, but not exclusive to this space, when companies are moving forward and they want to move forward and they have this deadline and they have it, they just throw the gas on and they just throw more people mm-hmm. and more gasoline into the fire to try to make it happen. Mm-hmm. When what they should be doing is removing themselves, stepping back for a minute. And I'm not even talking like a month, I'm talking a day.
Yeah.
If every company could just stop for one day and say, hey, let's slow down a minute. Mm-hmm. Let's come together and let's look at our organization and our routines and our structure. Yeah. And what is the one SOP we're going to follow on this? And what is the one path that we're going? How will we manage meetings? I know I'm oversimplifying it because I've never seen it happen in one day and we've gotten involved with these multiple times. But it is really about taking that time and saying, you know what? This week, we're going to spend 2 hours as a company and we're just going to talk about meetings. Who should be on them? How should we have them? How should the invite be? What should the agenda be listed? And then next week or 2 weeks from now, we're just going to talk about like process cadence. Who should be involved? Who should sign off? Like what should the timeline be? What should the header in the email? I mean, just simple things. How do you do email? Yeah. Those little moments where you create a new highway to where you're going and how you're going to go there in the most efficient way is going to save so many hours. It's funny because we'll get through one of these processes with a team and they'll sit back and go, oh my gosh, we took a year off of that project timeline because now we are so much more streamlined.
Oh, yeah.
And then you ask the question, well, are you missing anything? Are you worried? Like, how could that possibly be feasible that you saved a year? And when you go back and you challenge them to what has been missed, mm-hmm. nothing. What is more efficient? Everything.
Yeah.
Who is more aligned? Everyone. There's value in that.
And it's getting leadership to understand, to slow down, to speed up, can save them millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Yes.
It's a matter of having leadership champions that believe that having these meetings that have nothing to do about Project X, but have everything to do about Project X, are vital and necessary to be able to sit there and say, are we working in the most effective way? Are we communicating in the most effective way? Are we bringing in the right people? What is our decision-making process? What is our move forward process? Who signs off on what, when? How do we get things into a queue so people know what's coming down the pipe? There's all of these things that take time to figure out. And you're right. People build SOP over SOP over SOP. And guess what? Somebody comes in from a different company and they go, well, we have this SOP for this. And all of a sudden that SOP gets added to the list.
Or I need to know this, add me in on this, put this person on it. I want this information. What did you do with that? It's all, sometimes, it's just redundant. I think you kind of walk me into the last question a little.
Sure.
Here, because I feel like you and I have talked a lot about trust.
Yeah.
And clarity and internal communication, especially in high growth environments, especially when there's pressure, right? How much of alignment is actually operational versus emotional?
You know what? We are emotional beings. As human beings, we're emotional beings. You could be the most dedicated scientist, and you still come to work that morning with all the baggage that followed you into the office. We all make decisions. It's amazing to me how many people make decisions based on emotion versus based on data. In the end, people don't slow down. They don't take the time. They don't ask themselves, why am I doing this? They just make a decision because they figure if I don't make a decision, we're going to be further behind the 8 ball. And a lot of it comes down to, how do I feel about it at this point in time, today, right now? And tomorrow, we'll deal with tomorrow. And by that philosophy of we'll deal with tomorrow, it's just pushing the can down the road.
Yeah.
And all that's doing is pushing the can down the road. So I think emotion, we are emotional beings, whether we're data scientists or we're marketing and salespeople. Some are far more emotionally driven than others, but we all have a sense of emotion when we're put in a corner and we're said, you need to make a decision. That decision comes out, I would say, is far more emotionally driven.
Dr. B and I wrote a book called Change Agility recently, and that emotional, that EQ piece really kind of shines through pretty. Yeah. Like there is, I think about, as you were just talking now, I think about the leader who feels left out, who feels like their voice wasn't heard, or the person that everyone has something they bring to the table. It doesn't matter how you're wired, what you do for a living. We all show up with something. And that sometimes we have to recognize that our something might be an impediment in our job, right? And that sometimes we have to, if we don't trust, we have to figure out why we don't trust.
Right.
And how to not, and how to trust, how to find, if we don't have the right people, there's a million reasons that you don't trust. But find that way to align your trust, your emotion with the people that work for you, and figure out that change agility, the ability to drive change in a company, in your organization, push something forward. Really, a third of that, our triangulation theory is that a third of that is you. It's your emotions. It's the stuff that your team is going to let get in the way, that has to be at one point, that tough conversation has to hammer down and say, hey, listen, Colleen, the only reason that you want to be part of this is because you're so damn insecure and you don't want to be left out, or you're a control freak, and you need to know that. And if you hired John, why'd you hire him if you're going to do his job for him? Get with it, Colleen, right? Sometimes it's a tough conversation that has to happen there with yourself.
Trust is a difficult thing. It's something that is earned daily. It can be broken immediately. It's almost impossible to get back. Once you've lost trust in a person, in a process, in a team member, or whatever, it's almost impossible to get it back. You may still work with the person, but you're always going to be second guessing. You're always going to be wondering what's the real agenda, what's going on in the background, what am I missing, what are they not telling me? And as leaders,
death is when the CEO, if you lose trust in your CEO.
Absolutely, that's deadly.
That's deadly.
That's when people start walking out the door. People start walking out the door when trust is lost in the CEO. Organizations start bleeding key people left, right, and center.
Yeah, Ben, absolutely. So, Ben, I don't know if you know why Burn the Blueprint was actually created, but I believe these are unprecedented times.
I agree.
I believe that what got us here won't get us there. That we are in, I know this is a taboo, but we're in an industrial revolution. We have generations that don't align. We have the Gen Z stare brought up behind a computer. We have Gen X, which is the most insensitive generation ever. Suck it up, the suck it up buttercup generation.
And
we don't want to hear you
We're
whine.
insensitive and insecure. I mean, I'll own that as a generation.
But we also have AI that's changing things faster than we've ever seen change driven, right? And then we have a whole nother industry that's building on the backside of AI that we need to transition to. Mm-hmm. We have something that we call labor elasticity, like how are organizations changing and taking the time that you save with AI and moving it to a more productive place like innovation and whatever. So I believe that all these leadership books that were written after our parents finished work and they had, the boss that they just listened to and you got a paycheck, you did your job, and your boss, was one voice. Then we went into more of a collaborative leadership environment where we were servant leaders and principle-centered leaders, right? And then somewhere in COVID, we just started adding pages, and diversity got complicated. So we started kind of saying, "Hey, let's change this one word, or let's cut this out." And we never really just said, "Hold on, times are different. We need a different strategy. What worked 5 years ago is not going to work today. We're moving too fast." So, in the vein of burning the blueprint and alignment, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, Ben. Mm-hmm. In the vein of burn the blueprint, what blueprint would you burn for alignment, and what do we need to do differently in 2026 and beyond?
I honestly think that the C-suite have to get out of the boardroom. If you want to have true alignment and true understanding and true pulse of the organization, call it management by walking around, call it actually going out and seeing people, call it whatever you want to do. Your best ideas are not going to be coming to you on a dashboard. Everybody is completely reliant on a dashboard. They go, "I don't have time to walk around. I don't have time to talk to people." You don't have time not to. You don't have time not to. He says, I see leadership walking into board meetings at 8 o'clock in the morning and leaving at 4:30 in the afternoon. And all they're doing is they're relying on PowerPoint after PowerPoint after PowerPoint, and we need to burn that bridge. We need to burn that blueprint, and we need to go back to actually taking the time to talking to the people that are actually doing the things and finding out what their challenges are and what are they seeing that's coming up that we're not looking at, we're not paying attention to.
I love that. One thing that we do when we send our strategists in, and trust me, my team doesn't love this very much, but they love the outcome, is I have them do one shift with the sales team, right? Which they should. They travel, they spend a whole day with them, they hear what's being said versus what's being delivered, right? They look for that chasm. But the most important thing they do that gives us the most credibility, that gets the most buy-in, that helps us drive it forward, to your point, Ben Baker, is they have to spend one day working at the level closest to the customer. Awesome. And doing the job with them. If it means they're cleaning floors or washing cars, or they have to spend one shift with the people that are closest to the customer. And I will tell you that the minute you do that as a CEO, to your point, the minute that you do that as a CEO, the whole organization changes.
Yes.
Because you start to see things differently. Those team members see things differently. And everyone above them starts paying attention in a different way. It's remarkable. I love that. Thank you. That is such a great blueprint to burn and a new one to build, right? So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Ben, always fun. I am Ben Baker. I am Ben. Love it. Thank you for playing today. Thank you for talking about alignment. Thank you for always putting great content out there for the world to read and see. I really appreciate you, Ben.
Hey, I appreciate everything you guys are doing at Peak, and I love the fact that you're doing your part to change the world.
Oh, that's the nicest thing anybody ever said. How did you know? Thank you, Ben.